The woman who thinks that 2 for 1 means literally free because, that's because the other person doesn't know math. The girl whose grandmother passed and all her relatives didn't care and were just in it for the money. So this was back around 5 years ago. I was working the entryway to this theme park in my city. I don't know if it's just in Canada where you have to pay to get into a theme park, but that is what we do here. Then, when you're inside, you pay for whatever rides, games, or food you want. So in my booth, we have 4 people plus the supervisor behind us in case beep goes down. So here are the players: me, co-worker, supervisor, kid 1, and Karen, who's the entitled mother. So along comes these kids who give me 10 coupons that are 2 for 1. They're all excited. So I'm doing the computer stuff and putting the coupons in the right section. So the computer spits out the final total, which is around 200, I believe. Kid 1, huh? Me, $200, please. Why? That is the total it came out with. But it's 2 for 1. Yes, and the total is $200. No, it's 2 for 1. Yes, but the total comes to this amount. No, that isn't right. Yes, it is. How will you be paying, cash or credit? Kid yells over at his mom and shouts the final price. Like a beep rhino, Karen comes stomping over. How dare you charge us $200, you beeping thief! It's free! No, the total comes to $200. The computer computed. I will not give you $200. We are getting in for free. Give us our tickets now. Sorry, miss, but the 2 for 1s came to that price. Don't you know math? 2 for 1 means free. Free, beep it! She's shrieking at this point. My supervisor's coming over to save me, but I tell her not to. I gots this. Frankly, I was having too much fun with Karen. Listen here, beep. No wonder you work this beeping job. You can't do math. It's free and that is final. Miss, 2 for 1 is what it implies. You pay 1, you get 1 free. Not all of it is free. And you have 10 kids, so it's that amount. Karen sees the supervisor behind me. You there! Fire this beep! He is trying to con the customer! At a theme park? You do know where you are, right? Karen is flustered. Whatever the stink that means. Beep it! I'm getting in for free with or without the tickets. Grabs the kids and goes to the second entryway where there are tons of door people and real cops because the drunks come out during this time. 10 seconds later, she comes back to the booth since they denied her entry because she had no ticket. She goes to the next person next to me and gives them the coupons. Now my coworker, she is physically challenged. She is in a wheelchair. Karen sees this and is livid. Karen, great, now I got the beep retard. Supervisor says, get the beep out of my line. You do not call my coworker that name. Okay, I'm sorry. Beeping apology. Coworker says, apology not accepted. Please leave before we call the police. Karen storms off. You know, guys, I don't know if Karen is the entitled parent and the kids are the choosing beggar in this instance, or if Karen is both the entitled parent and the choosing beggar, but there is obviously a very flavored section of this that's very much choosing beggar. And that gives me a great idea for a movie, okay? Let's have an entitled parent be a choosing beggar, then gets mad at the person who wouldn't accept their bad behavior. Like, for example, Karen here gets pro-revenge on the attendant at the theme park, and then goes to Reddit to wonder if she is the beep. That would make a great film. Somebody please get on that. Okay guys, real quickly before the video continues, I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, private internet access. So for those of you who live in Europe, you've probably heard about the Article 13 being passed. And basically for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it means that if you enjoy watching YouTube videos and looking at memes on Reddit, you're not gonna get as much of that stuff as you're used to, because now a lot of it is gonna end up being blocked because of copyright law. You should totally check out private internet access. It's a VPN solution, which in layman's terms means you are now able to completely anonymize yourself on the internet, encrypt your connection, and mask your IP address. So if you live in Europe, you can make it look like you're in America or Asia or wherever and gain access to all that blocked content. It's a super great way to get past all those just awful restrictions and look at the stuff that you want to see. It's anonymous, there's no logs kept, and best of all, you can get the service for just under €4 a month. And on top of that, you can help support the channel by using my link below to sign up for it. And then I'll be able to use the money to help make more videos and awesome stuff like that. So I definitely would appreciate it. And yeah, thank you all so much. And let's get into today's video. Sorry in advance, but this is going to be very long, kind of sad and more venting than anything. But I recently got an email about a family get-together which reminded me exactly of why I do not ever see this part of my family ever again. Here is my lengthy background. I moved to the United States 3 years ago, and this happened around 2 years of me living in the United States. I'm originally from Germany, so sorry if my English is wonky here and there, but met my husband there. He proposed to me while I was meeting his family in the United States for the first time, and I am a fairly you only live once kind of person. I had been waiting for my green card for nearly 2 years, when around Christmas time my grandfather had a stroke and shortly after died. He was 94. I was devastated because I had not been able to see him in nearly 2 years, and he meant the world to me. Around 3 months after, my grandmother went on a walk and was hit by a driver, speeding out of his driveway without looking. She died not even a day after from how severe her wounds were. I woke up to the news that my grandmother had passed a week after finally getting my green card and 2 days after receiving her last letter, urging me to write it her again because I hadn't done so for a while. My husband knew in how much pain I was and booked a flight for the very next day, even though it had really hurt our savings for a wedding ceremony that we had planned for the coming October. I took 2 weeks of leave from my work. They weren't happy, but they also couldn't afford to lose me, so they sucked it up. I cried a bunch on the plane. When I walked down the street I had walked so many times before, and when I finally came through the door, with the house still smelling like she never left, I broke down. Later, my mom came to console me until she had to break the news that aside from me, my uncle, one of my 3 aunts, and 2 of my cousins, who had 4 and 3 kids, would stay in the house as well. My mother was the only actual child of my grandmother. My uncle and my 3 aunts were my grandfather's and his first wife's, who died of breast cancer's, kids. They never had the best relationship with my grandmother because most of them were between 10 and 18 and didn't consider her their real mom. Also, my family is super Christian, but most of them are the stereotypical holier-than-thou kind of Christians. My grandfather set it up that his children would only get his inheritance after both grandparents passed, out of worry for my grandmother. Many of my aunts and my uncle had been very not so subtly voicing how happy they were about finally getting their money. I got 2 days of alone time in the house I pretty much grew up in, until all hell broke loose. The cast. There are more, but these are the important ones. EU equals entitled uncle. EA, entitled aunt. CC, creepy cousin. Me, you guessed it. S, my lovely sister. M, my mom. GM, my late grandmother. 2 days after staying alone in the house, entitled uncle and entitled aunt arrived. Entitled uncle is a massive sexist beep who preaches that women were created by God to serve men. On a side note, all of my aunts and uncles are filthy rich. One of my uncles literally is the head doctor of a gynecology clinic and pretty much owns it. They all have a minimum 3 cars and nice houses, but they are all greedy and cheap. First thing he does after saying hi is ask where my grandmother puts her expensive harmonicas. She had 4 beautiful silver ones. He says his daughter Sam wants to have one, but he doesn't know which one, so he takes all of them. Entitled Aunt is searching for jewelry and takes all the money people bring as offerings for the cost of the funeral, most likely pocketing it all. Most of the jewelry is in the room I'm staying in, but I kept it locked because I don't trust them. She actually asked me why I kept locking the door, and I told her because of the children that one of the cousins is bringing later, and I like my valuables locked away. She proceeded to scold me, an adult, how that wasn't fair, and how dare you don't trust us. Both refuse to book a hotel, so they stay in the house, which isn't a big deal, but both expect to be taken care of. They send me and S, who spends most of the days with me to see that I'm doing okay, to go buy groceries from our money, cook them food, and do the dishes afterwards. Mind you, the flight alone cost me $3,000 because it's the bad kind of last minute, and I only have so much money to spend. though my husband worked out a pretty generous budget for one person. I'm too beaten to fight this, and I don't want to start drama, so I mostly comply. When me or my sister ask entitled uncle for help or money, entitled uncle just brushes this off, saying that those are womanly duties. He only helped with the dishes once. We start planning the funeral, and entitled uncle says it should be adults only. I am a married 20-year-old woman, so I wasn't budging in being involved. The following conversation goes on. I think we can just leave the same ceremony. Grandmother liked it, and it would save us time and effort. Me just stares at him with a horrified look. What? My mother, who was too perplexed to say anything, entitled Aunt Number 1. Yeah, it was very nice last time. That's a great idea. I don't think so. Absolutely not. Entitled Uncle gives me an annoyed look. She was her own person. She deserves her own funeral. I'm holding back tears at this point. She raised him after his mother died, and this is how he treats her? He also tries to insert his darling daughter, a famous Christian singer, in as many musical pieces as possible. Me, M, and S are firmly against this, as this is no time to show off and our voices are heard. She is only allowed to play instrumental numbers. Me and my sister contribute a lot to the funeral planning, while entitled uncle just sits there with a sour expression, trying to put his dumb ideas in the planning as much as possible. But ultimately, the ideas of me, S, and M are better received by friends of my grandparents and the pastor. We even tell him stories about how my grandmother struggled as a child after the war, some anecdotes she used to tell us, etc., which the pastor likes because he likes knowing more about the person the service is for. On an evening during the dinner me and S made, this horrible, horrible conversation ensues, after EU and EA praised what good Christians they are, while me and S are trying not to throw up in our mouths. EU. You know, when I first heard about the accident, my first thought was with the poor man who drove the car. I would really like to meet him and tell him that not only God, but we also forgive him. EA nods in agreement and spews more about forgiveness. My sister slams her hands on the table, gets up, and leaves the kitchen without a word. I sit there, boiling. Entitled Uncle says, "What's wrong with S? Is her stomach upset?" I just look at him with baffled and disgusted looks. Did you just listen to yourself? Our first thought was with grandmother, how she was dragged under the car until that monster realized that he had a person under his car, how much pain she was in, how much she suffered, and how she died alone in the hospital. I break down in tears and go to my grandmother's bedroom, the room I was sleeping in. He tries to tell me I can't talk to him like this, and yada yada, but me and S ignore him through the locked door, holding each other crying. Entitled Aunt tries to mediate, but EU is unreasonable and goes to his room. We don't speak about this again. In fact, we don't speak with him at all. Later that week, we go to buy the coffin and flowers for her grave. EA and EU try desperately to buy the cheapest of the cheap, as they don't want to lose much from their money. All that stuff was taken out of my grandparents' money. The lady from the morgue asks us if any of us want to see her, but warns us that it won't look nice because of the cause of her death. I'm the only one who does. You don't want to see that, she will look gross. Yeah, you are better off not to. Why make yourself more upset? I'm practically hissing at them. I haven't seen her for 2 years and not by choice. I want to see her one last time. I said not by choice because when waiting on your green card and you apply for it when you were already in the US, adjustment of status, you are not allowed to leave the country or they will drop your entire case. Germany isn't very big, and while most of my relatives live farish away, for German standards, most of them visited maybe once every 2 years. My cousins even less than that. Most of them would only see my grandparents every 5-ish years for my grandfather's birthday, when he would hold family get-togethers and he would pay for food, hotels, etc. EU kept telling me I didn't know what was good for me, when I was a married, grown, beeping adult. I got to say goodbye, caress her cold cheeks, and really make peace with the fact that she was gone, and not just vanished. The day of the service is the worst. EU's 2 sons come with their combined 7 children. They run around, scream, make a mess, and their parents don't even attempt to clean anything up. The carpet is now stained with mud, cabinets are open, food is being left out, etc. Some kids gossip about how nasty my grandmother looks. No one saw her but me and EU later, so he must have told them. And how that girl, me by the way, still went to see her. I kept telling my cousin to tell his kids to simmer down, but he ignores my pleas. The service was nice. The pastor had noticed how me, M, and S were the only ones truly affected by this, and addressed us directly a few times during the service. Some of my relatives were shouting and laughing during the service right behind me, which made me really mad. They couldn't even keep up the facade of grieving children for the duration of the service. When grandmother was put under the earth and people gave us, me, M, and S, their condolences, they were pretty much forming a line to do so. Creepy cousin came up to hit on me, while giving me his condolences, saying stuff like, "You look so beautiful, I missed you so much," and "I'm so glad to finally meet you again." Right next to grandmother's grave, I felt sick. He had been overly touchy and creepy in the past, but not only was I married, but I was literally next to the grave of my grandmother that had just been put in the ground. The after party was people celebrating like it was your normal get-together. Everyone was cheery, and you wouldn't be able to tell what this was a funeral if no one had told you. My cousin tried to creep at me a few times, and other relatives tried to be overly friendly while talking about all the money they would have been making. After eating, I just wanted to leave. On my way out, I encountered Sam, the Christian singer who had been wailing non-stop, telling me how she must be the saddest person here because she is still crying. I just stood there silent, trying not to punch her. I had not seen them for 2 years. 2 beeping years, and here stood this chick, crying over a person she only cared to visit after 5-ish years, only when my grandfather was on his deathbed, and went straight to abandoning grandmother again. She cried some more and tried to ask me how I was, how I've been, but I kept it short because I just wanted to get out. I couldn't take this anymore. She gave me 100 euros in cash for my mother. I guess she meant it as an offering, but to me it was guilt money. My mom gave it to me because she knew how much money I had lost over this trip. After the service, me and S had to clean up the entire house because of the horrible state entitled uncle, entitled aunt, and the children left the house in within that one day. It wasn't all horrible, as I was able to see my grandparents' house again. I got to read a bunch of love letters that my grandfather had sent to my grandmother that she had kept in some of her journals. A few months after they told us to write a list of what things we wanted from the house, I had already taken some books grandmother had read me as a child, and a picture she has drawn. I wanted an old pot with bear's pan on it, in which she used to make me hot milk in. There wasn't really anything else that I wanted. My uncles, aunts, and cousins were a different story though. My sister wanted one of their nice dish sets they had treasured over the years, but entitled uncle wanted the entire set. He took almost all the silver, a bunch of dolls that had been promised to my youngest sister, not S, and S had to almost literally fight for this. EU had already taken many expensive instruments and other expensive dish sets. My sister got me most of the silver because she wanted me to have more than just a little pot, so I would be able to give my children something that had belonged to my grandparents. The love letters were really heartwarming. Some were from the time they had just started dating, and really let me appreciate how much love they had for each other, and how long they were romantic. My grandfather would write notes after they bickered, or just when he wanted her to know how much he loved her and appreciated her. Knowing that I will never have to see them again is truly a blessing, even though I'm still heartbroken over the death of my grandparents. I still can't tell this story without crying, but it's a therapeutic and a way to write it all down. So usually after reading the story, I like to make a few quips and stuff, but honestly, I think this is one of those things that's not really a joking matter. It seems pretty evident here that the relatives of OP just want, they're in it for the money. That's all they really care about. They don't care about her grandmother. They don't care about her stuff. They just want, to get the most money as possible, which is probably why they refused to stay in a hotel. They didn't want to have to pay for food. They tried to grab stuff as quickly as they could. And, they just wanted to let their kids run rampant, and they wanted OP and her mother and her sister to wait on them hand and foot like they were basic servants. That's really sad. That's honestly just pretty pathetic. Pretty pathetic attitude for human beings to have. I'd like to give my condolences to OP for the loss of her grandmother. I know that's got to be a sad event for you, and I hope maybe writing this and getting it out onto the subreddit helped to kind of relieve some of that inner frustration you had. And I hope to see a pro-revenge story from you someday. Alrighty guys, well that was r/entitled parents. What did you all think? Please be sure and leave me a comment down below. What did you think about these stories? How did you feel about the woman who thinks that 2 for 1 means literally free because, you know, that's because the other person doesn't know math? What did you think of the slightly sadder story of the girl whose grandmother passed and all her relatives didn't care and were just in it for the money? Please leave me a comment and let me know your guys' thoughts. Be sure and like the smash button if you haven't already. It does help out the channel and all that great stuff. If you want to see more of these videos in the future, please be sure and subscribe. Go down and check out my second channel, Cascarte Gaming, where I have Let's Plays, live stream archives, and walkthroughs. We're having a lot of fun over there, so be sure and check that out as well. Be sure and remember to check out our sponsor of today's video, Private Internet Access. And yeah, that is pretty much it. Until next time, guys, I'm your host, Cascarte the Utica. This has been r/entitled parents, and I will see you all at the top.
There goes a sight from my soul.